Hi, I'm a Sand Recap, and this is a movie to get. Rampage. Davis Okoye, a primatologist, has a strong bond with George, a silverback gorilla with a lot of intelligence who has been in his care since he was born. George, a wolf, and a reptile all develop monstrous sizes when an errant genetic experiment goes wrong. To secure an antidote and avert a global catastrophe, Okoye teams up with a discredited genetic engineer, the military, and the mutated beasts as they embark on a path of destruction. A brand new technology known as CRISPR was created in 1993 and quickly put to use in dangerous experiments. A lab rat that has been mutated with CRISPR today has destroyed the entire crew of a space station. The only survivor is Dr. Carrie Atkins, who is contacting Energyne executives to assist with her return. Carrie is instructed by Energyne CEO 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 to either return the mutagen samples or not return at all. The rat monster pursues Carrie as she returns for the samples. She reaches the escape pod, where she is let out as the station explodes with the rat still inside. However, the damage to the pod causes it to break open, depressurize, and explode, resulting in Carrie's death. The samples themselves are transported across the nation. Davis Okoye, a primatologist, leads Nelson, Connor, and Amy to an ape enclosure at a San Diego animal sanctuary. They observe Pavo, an ape, attempting to mate with a female, but Davis splits them up. Davis gently calms Pavo down after he gets angry. Just at that moment, George, an albino gorilla, comes charging in. This causes Connor to get scared and upset Pavo, who runs after Connor until George knocks him over. Pavo is scared by George until Davis talks to him as well. Davis considers George to be his best friend because he turns out to be a playmate. Davis graciously declines Amy's request to go out for drinks after work. After that, Nelson comes up to him and inquires as to why he is closer to animals than to people. Davis asserts that the animals just take him in. The mutagen samples begin to arrive that night. One lands in George's enclosure, another near a wolf pack in the forest, and the final one in a Florida river. George and a lone wolf are both sprayed with the gas as a crocodile consumes the entire sample. Davis is contacted the following morning to inquire about George. George is in the grizzly bear enclosure. Nelson informs him. George is scared to death, and they discover a dead bear inside. He tells Davis that the bear attacked him first because he has a scratch mark on his chest. George now stands 9 feet tall as he steps out. The country has been hit by the mutagen, according to news reports. 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 and her brother Brett, as well as Kate Caldwell, watch the news on television. While Claire is content with the mutagen's success in her Project Rampage experiment, Brett is frightened by the amount of money they are losing. Claire suggests that they hire a private military group to fix the problem so that they can deal with what might happen next. Kate goes to the sanctuary for animals to try to talk to Davis about what happened. She says she works for Energyne and made the mutagen, so she might be able to stop George from growing. George is kept in a cage until he starts to become more aggressive when they try to find him. He eventually escapes the cage and wanders the sanctuary on his own, frightening everyone there. Davis pursues him as soon as the police arrive. They fire their weapons at George until Davis convinces him to back down. As a helicopter flies overhead, things get worse. It starts hitting George with tranquilizer darts until he falls asleep. The military team, led by Burke, goes into the forest in Wyoming to find the mutagen sample. Burke gets in touch with the Whitens to let them know that the container is empty. The group finds massive paw prints in the ground and dead wolves spread out across the ground as they move deeper into the forest. The mutated wolf, nicknamed Ralph, then spots them and attacks them as he runs through the forest. The team tries to shoot at him, but Ralph picks them off one by one until only Burke is left. He tells the helicopter to fire at Ralph, but the wolf leaps out of the trees and destroys the helicopter, sending it plunging into the lake. Ralph then traps Burke and he tries to make one last stand, but Ralph eats him up. Harvey Russell, a government employee, arrives at the sanctuary to board a plane and transport George away from the public. Davis and Kate are also brought in for questioning. Davis argues that George being on the plane would be suicide, but Russell believes they are in control of everything. After perusing Davis and Kate's files, Russell reveals in the air that Kate had been fired from Energyne and served 13 months in prison for attempting to steal research from the labs. Davis realizes as a result that she was lying and that she is unable to fix George. Claire uses a radio frequency to call the mutated animals after learning about the wolf incident. Ralph and Lizzie, the crocodile, travel to Chicago, where Energyne is situated. Even though George is sedated, he is able to hear the frequency, and he starts to wake up. He explodes into rage and demolishes the cage. As Davis tries to protect himself and Kate, he attacks the agents. Russell nearly dies when Davis intervenes, but George only knocks Russell out. The plane begins to descend after the turbine blows out. Davis, Russell, Kate, and Davis eject themselves from the plane as it lands on the ground after Davis fastens parachutes to them. When the three of them land, they discover that George has made it to the city after surviving the crash. After learning more about Kate, Davis makes it clear that he doesn't trust her. She explains that her brother was diagnosed with cancer while she was working for Energyne, and she hoped that CRISPR would be able to treat him. However, she found out that Claire had been using CRISPR to create dangerous weapons. Kate attempted to flee with it, but she was apprehended and imprisoned. Davis then explains how he discovered George. George, a young boy in fear, was hiding under the truck of poachers when his mother was taken by them. Davis and his team found him and shot and killed the poachers as soon as they fired. Russell wakes up and decides to assist Davis and Kate because he is grateful Davis saved his life. Russell, Davis, and Kate meet with a military team that is keeping an eye on Ralph and George as they travel to Chicago. They are aware that the animals are being brought into the city and must be contained. Russell assists Davis and Kate in stealing a helicopter and entering the city. When George, Ralph, and Lizzie arrive in the city, a massive rampage ensues. As the monsters begin to demolish the city, Davis and Kate arrive. They head to Energyne in search of the antidote that can halt them because they are aware that they will not be able to do so on their own. After Davis lands the helicopter, they flee the commotion and into the building. They locate the antidote laboratory, but Brett holds the Widens hostage with a gun after the Widens discover them first. The two are informed by Claire that the antidote will not restore the animals to normal behavior. Rather, it will only reduce their increased aggression. Before taking Kate with her, she takes the gun and shoots Davis in the abdomen. The Widens attempt to board their own helicopter and flee with Kate and their supplies, but the monsters begin climbing the tower. Brett flees when George climbs to the top and crashes the helicopter. After surviving the gunshot, Davis appears and saves Kate, but Claire is forcing them to assist her. Instead, Davis keeps George occupied for long enough for Kate to take a recovered vial of the antidote and put it in Claire's bag. Claire is pushed into George's path after Kate punches her, causing George to grab her and eat her along with the antidote. Russell, who somehow made it into the city quickly, is discovered by Brett as he nears the door. In order for Brett to be free, he tells him to hand over the laptop with his research. Brett gladly agrees and runs out the door, only to be splattered in a messy way by a piece of falling debris. While George continues to demolish, Davis and Kate wait for the antidote to work. Ralph and Lizzie rise to the top, too. Davis and Kate get on the Widens helicopter so they can get enough air to keep from getting hurt. The tower comes crashing down as a result of all the monsters. Davis and Kate make it out, and George comes out of the rubble looking like he did before. Davis and George, however, arrive at the conclusion that it is past time to put an end to this as Ralph and Lizzie continue their rampage. Kate joins Russell in attempting to halt the military's attempt to carry out an airstrike to eliminate the monsters after learning that the military is also planning one. Ralph and Lizzie are at odds with George. Ralph is tossed around by him, but the wolf can fly and shoot quills, and Lizzie is the largest and nearly indestructible of the bunch. Ralph is tricked into flying toward Davis, but Davis moves and allows Ralph to fly into Lizzie's path. Ralph is grabbed by the throat by the crocodile, and the crocodile then swallows his head. Lizzie is too strong for George to pound, so she throws him against a pole and impales him. Davis also tries to kill Lizzie with the helicopter's artillery and throws a grenade belt at her neck, but she is barely hurt. Lizzie pursues Davis and nearly consumes him until George leaps into the air with the pole and rams it into Lizzie's eye and through her head, resulting in her death. The military colonel calls off the strike after seeing everything that happened. George appears to be weak from his wound and dies, only to reveal that he was just playing games with Davis. As they speculate about George's new home, the heroes begin to leave the city.